Good morning. Today is Thursday, March 13th. This is Wake Up with KERA News. I'm Andrew Garcia, and we're in for a pretty nice day here in North Texas. We'll see some more clouds in the sky today, and temperatures will climb into the upper 80s, even the 90s in some places, so pretty warm. Folks living in rural Collin County could eventually get better access to necessary emergency services. But what happens while they wait? We'll hear that conversation in just a bit. Let's get into today's news. The U.S. Department of Education announced it's laying off about 1,300 workers. That includes workers in the Civil Rights Office, which handles discrimination complaints. The National Council on Teacher Quality says the layoffs will deeply hurt work to improve student outcomes, while Secretary of Education Linda McMahon called the layoffs, quote, a significant step toward restoring the greatness of the U.S. education system. Another bill concerning Dallas area rapid transit made its way to the Texas Senate this week, the third one of the current session. SB 2118 would restructure DART's board, allowing each member city to have a representative. If the legislation passes, it'll greatly reduce Dallas's voting power. Rural Collin County desperately needs more fire and ambulance services. There might be a solution, but it will take time to get things going. And where does that leave people in the meantime when they're in need? KERA's Caroline Love says what's happening in Collin County is an issue all over Texas.
So, Caroline, Collin County already pays cities and towns to answer 911 calls in unincorporated areas. Is that program not working?
Yeah, cities say that they need more money to meet an increase in demand for services. Collin County has a huge population now. It's growing, and that includes the unincorporated areas. There are even some cities who have opted out in participating in this altogether, saying that they just can't keep up with demand. And I've talked to some residents, and they're scared. They're scared of losing fire service, and they're scared of help not arriving in time. A woman named Joanne Graham told me there was a mobile home that caught on fire near her place in unincorporated Collin County, and it took a while for help to arrive.
We all know what traffic in Collin County is like.
That's why Graham and another unincorporated Collin County resident got a bunch of people to sign a petition that they then submitted to the Commissioner's Court to create an emergency services district.
I'm curious, how would an emergency service district boost funding for fire and EMS in rural Collin County?
Yeah, so Collin County's budget for fire and ambulance services in unincorporated Collin County has largely stayed the same for over a decade, minus a couple of additions and a few exceptions. An emergency services district could collect tax revenue, including property tax revenue, and those tax dollars could then go to the cities and towns who are providing these services and then give them the funding they say they need. But as far as determining what that tax rate would be, Collin County Commissioner Daryl Hale says it's complicated right now.
It really depends on what the actual amount of property is that's inside the district as to what it's going to need to tax to be able to provide the services.
Plus, cities can opt out in participating in this, and so that could impact the boundaries of the emergency services district.
So creating an emergency services district requires voter approval, right? When is that election?
So the election would be in November, but there's a lot that needs to happen before we can even get to that. There's a public hearing about the petition July 21st. And again, it's up to the voters, so there's no guarantee this is going to pass if the commissioners call for an election. And if it does pass, there's a lot that they need to get going for that. They've got to appoint board members to run it. They've got to set a budget and then collect those taxes. And that wouldn't even be until January 2027.
That's almost 2 years away. What will the county do in the meantime?
That's a really good question, Justin. And a lot of residents have asked the same question of the Collin County commissioners, and they've really urged them to raise the budget for these services in that, roughly 2-year interim while this whole process is ongoing. And the county commissioners did set principles for the district, including continued service. So the status quo, at the least, is going to be there. But as far as if they're going to increase funding, that's not super clear right now.
I can't tell you if there's going to be an increase or decrease or of that nature. That's not something we have looked into, but certainly We will just make sure that excellent services are being provided.
That was Collin County Administrator Yoon Kim talking at a recent Commissioners Court meeting. And, Justin, this is an issue happening across the state of Texas, not just Collin County, and so it could very well come up in the state legislative session.
That was KERA's Caroline Love speaking with host Justin Martin. The Mavericks lost last night to the San Antonio Spurs 116-126. Dallas did put up a valiant effort, making up for their depleted roster by spreading the ball around, with 7 different players getting double-digit points and close to half their scoring coming from the bench. And the Big 12 recently announced it'll reduce the men's conference basketball schedule from 20 to 18 games next season. Vice President of the conference, Brian Thornton, says it'll ease the grind and give teams extra time to rest. Fans of This American Life, listen closely. It's not too late to get your tickets to 7 Things I Learned, a conversation with Ira Glass, happening this Saturday at the Winspear Opera House. Hear about the producer and host's inspiration and process, featuring storytelling that'll tug at your heartstrings like only Ira Glass can. You can find more information and other things to do at kera.org/calendar. Thanks so much for listening to Wake Up with KERA News. I'm your host, Andrew Garcia. This show is produced and edited by Shardae White and Bekah Morr. For more news in your inbox, visit kera.org/wakeup. That's where you can subscribe to the Wake Up with KERA News newsletter and get good morning vibes from our colleague Catherine Hobbs. Connect with us on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok at KERATX. See you tomorrow.